Los frescos y los precios de la energía por su alta volatilidad, y aquí parece que dio un respiro, que hubo una desaceleración, un crecimiento menor que en el mes de noviembre. Hablamos de un crecimiento del 3,2% y de ahí que los inversores pues ahora esperen que, ¿por qué no?, haya algún movimiento de tipos, no pronto, pero sí más de lo que se espera. Esas dos bajadas de tipos proyectadas por la Fed en su última reunión de política monetaria. Vamos a analizar todas estas consecuencias del mercado con Octavio Marenzi, director general de Opimas LLC. Octavio, how are you? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Fine. How do you value this December inflation data? The general CPI increased as expected, but the core CPI improves. What do you think?
Well, I think the Fed is a long way away from reaching its goals in terms of getting down or below 2% inflation. So I think inflation has surprised them as it did on the way up, and it surprised them on the way down that it's remained more stubborn than they thought. So I think they really are looking at a situation now where they're not going to be able to raise or lower interest rates any further than they have. They've gone through a bit of a lowering cycle, but everything seems to be in good shape. Markets are doing very well. The banks, as you pointed out, we've seen some very solid results from unemployment remains low, job creation remains high. All the things look positive. So that really speaks to in favor of the Fed not cutting rates any further and actually start to raise them potentially to get the inflation down to where they want it to be. So I think that's probably what we're looking at in 2025 is, particularly at the long end of the yield curve, is increasing interest rates that we've seen already and I think are going to continue for the foreseeable future.
Can interest rates fall sooner than expected?
I'm sorry?
Interest rates can fall sooner than expected?
No, I don't think they're going to fall at all. I mean, now the markets are basically saying we expect to see another cut of 25 basis points in the interest rates. But if you go back just a few months, they were expecting a full 1 percentage point cut in the interest rates or in the overnight rate. So it looks like it's going further and further into the future that we might by the middle of the year get another 25 basis point cut. But the odds of that are declining and looking less and less likely. And I think in all likelihood we'll see the Fed not do anything. There's no good reason for them to cut interest rates further now. The economy is doing well. As I said, unemployment is low. All the things look like they're pointing in the right direction. It seems it would be a big mistake to cut interest rates further. And I think you have to ask yourself is why did they even start in the latter part of 2024 start to cut interest rates? What was the motivation behind that? Because the story really hasn't changed. The economy is robust, markets are very high, real estate prices are all these asset prices are very high. It does not seem that the markets needed an additional boost from the Fed to go even higher.
Okay, the fourth quarter earnings season has already begun. What do you think of the results of big banking in general? Have there been any data, any number caught your attention?
Well, I think we've all seen that the headline numbers are very, very strong, particularly investment banking and trading activities, depending on which bank you're looking at, but the largest ones, those things did very, very well. What didn't do as well was basically the bread and butter retail banking and wholesale banking side of things, but their things seem to be fairly well contained. So in that side of business, we saw net interest margins come down, net interest income decrease a bit, deposits decrease a bit, lending levels go down ever so slightly, but in a very modest, moderate way. So it seems to be quite under control and nothing disastrous happening there. But the trading side of the house, the market's doing very, very well indeed. So that's the basic story there. But I think if you strip that away further, there's some areas of lending activity that are kind of interesting to note. For example, credit card lending went up quite considerably at most of the banks, somewhere between 8 and 10% on a year basis. That's quite considerably high. And the other thing that's very important to notice is sort of what the default rates are on loans, be it credit card loans or other kinds of loans, commercial loans as well. And there the numbers remain very subdued, so very, very low. And that's a very positive sign as well. It does not seem people are defaulting on their loans from the banks, and that is good for the banking industry. But that's a reflection of a robust economy in the US as well, and a robust consumer and robust businesses.
The question, Octavio, is how long they will be able to maintain these digits, these figures, given the prospects of 2025. Do you think there will be a downturn, lower profits in the next quarter?
Well, I think we've been waiting for the downturn for a long time now. So I think we've been waiting for the downturn for about 2 years now. It hasn't arrived. So I'm not sure it's going to arrive in the first quarter of 2025. I think we might have to wait longer if it ever comes at all. So there was long talk of a soft landing or a hard landing. It doesn't look like there's any landing. It just looks like the economy in the US keeps on moving upwards and onwards. So that might not happen there. I think from the perspective of the banks in the first quarter, we did point out that we're seeing the short-term interest rates still lowering a bit, but remaining stable as long-term interest rates go up. And for the banks, that's very good because they borrow money at the short end in the form of deposits, and then they lend it out in the form of loans with longer-term loans. So that difference is increasing with the steepening in the yield curve, and that's basically positive for banking activity. Now, banks do have sophisticated hedging strategies, so it's not a perfect indication, but by and large, that is going to help the banking sector in the US. The steepening of the yield curve, the fact that long-term interest rates are going up while short-term interest rates remain low, that's very positive for the banking sector overall. And I expect to see, as a result of that, in the first quarter of 2025, an increase in the net interest income that these banks are able to generate. And that is something that was under pressure in the last quarter of 2024.
Okay, Octavio Marenzi, Director General de Opimas LLC. Thank you for your point of view. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Bien, pues tenemos muchos más aspectos relacionados con los mercados. Ya saben que se están produciendo muchos movimientos